In this video, I will talk about some of the most common mistakes that people make regarding the management, the treatment of their chronic pain. And some of these mistakes, probably actually almost all of them, I've made myself too. So let's find out what they are and how we can avoid it to help us all live a more pain-free life so that we can live our life to the fullest. First mistake that people commonly make for managing their chronic pain is over-relying on passive methods. What do I mean by that? Medical advancements have come a long way in terms of things like medications, surgeries, and just prolonging our lives overall, like our lifespan. And one thing that we as Americans cannot seem to get under control is chronic pain. One reason this may be is because we are over-reliant on passive strategies. What do I mean by passive? Taking pain medications such as over-the-counter, prescribed, or illicit drugs, or trying to mask it with things like alcohol. Even medications as strong as opioids cannot seem to help people get their pain under control, at least in the long term, leading them to need even stronger and stronger doses over time. Besides medications, another common method that many family members have even told me when I've had my chronic pain is, hey, have you considered surgery? Or a surgery could probably fix that. And while I am neither against both medications and surgeries, I think they each have their place. But they aren't the only options when it comes to pain management. And I consider these also to be quite passive because things are being done to you, or you're taking a medication and you're waiting for its effects to kind of kick in and work. Regarding surgeries, yes, some surgeries can help, but they may not necessarily mean a complete improvement. Sometimes there may even be complications, or your pain could be even worse, right? So it may not be the answer that we're all hoping for, and a lot of people have experienced this, likely you who have tried one or two of these combination of approaches. And the thing about surgery and pain is, like, literally the surgeon is cutting you open, splicing this and patching this up and patching that back up and stitching you back up. Well, yeah, this itself is kind of like causing you more pain if you think about it. So kind of causing a little bit more pain to relieve larger amounts of pain. Now, of course, I want you to talk to all your physicians, doctors, disclaimer, because some people may have some serious issues that may need surgery. But this should be the very, 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 very last resort where you just cannot bear it anymore and you've considered any of these other options that I'm going to talk about, or any of the strategies that I'm going to be talking about on this channel for chronic pain management before you go and do something as extreme as surgery. So try the more conservative methods first. And this isn't meant to like knock all the surgeons out there or like the pharmacists out there. Despite the best of intentions, sometimes it's just not the one size fits all answer. Another passive method is seeking alternative medicines such as massage, chiropractor, acupuncture, and so on. And these may seem like they're active, but I actually consider them passive as well because things are being done to you. You're like laying there and someone else is massaging you, adjusting your spine, putting needles in you for acupuncture. And again, I'm not completely against these methods. I just don't think that they're the complete answer to managing your pain because they're so passive, and you should be, like many other things like in your life, managing things more actively. And if you think about it, it's kind of like pretty common sense, but we've come really over-reliant on these passive methods, and we're not really taking control of our own pain. And one reason I'm not a big fan of this, and why I think you shouldn't be over-reliant on things like taking medications, or even like going to the chiropractor for adjustments to just completely manage your pain, is once you stop taking these medications, once you stop getting adjustment, you are in a lot of pain and you're kind of over-reliant on this. And the moment you forget your medications, or what if you're like traveling or you're like away on a road trip, you can't go to a chiropractor all of a sudden, right? So what are you going to do then, right? You don't have any strategies to manage the pain actively yourself in the moment when you are having such pain and you need to overcome it so that you can live your life. Not only that, but things like medications and alternative medicine takes a significant amount of time, like to remember it. You got to go to your appointments, and money, right? Like chronic memberships, fees, just paying for like expensive medications are getting more and more expensive. Even if you're getting these things paid for, even they're getting mailed to you, it's just like such a huge part of your routine and your habit. And despite all that, it doesn't help with your pain. So that doesn't seem to be the way either. So as you can guess, the active approaches are better combined with passive to better manage your pain overall. So what I mean by active approaches then, I'm going to talk more about this in my other videos, or this is going to be like a super, super long video. But basically, you're actually already doing an active thing already. Taking an active step in learning more about pain and pain education and pain neuroscience education, PNE, based on that research, the stories of people who've overcome the pain like myself to just live a better life. And that's really more of the active things that you should be doing to take a step towards your chronic pain management, treatment, and recovery. What's the second mistake that I think people make too much when it comes to chronic pain? And that's focusing on your pain way too much. Either you're thinking about it all the time, frequently, or every other day thinking about pain. It just comes up a lot in your head or just revolves around your life. So that means you're making pain such a big part of your life that's taken over your life, right? How many of you can identify with that? So are you one of these people? Do you think about your pain or complain about it or even talk to your family about it or your friends or even got them conditioned on it so that during conversation at one point or another, they're going to ask you like, hey, so-and-so, like, how's your pain doing? Or has there been any improvement? How are you doing with the pain? Well, if you think about it, that in itself is like kind of like a suggestion thing where psychologically, even if you're not having any pain at the moment they ask you about pain, you're probably going to be thinking about pain, and then you're back into that cycle again about pain. And so you might not ask yourself, have you kind of trained even your family members and friends, your social circle in pain? And so when they think about Jeff, the first thing they think about is them in pain. Well, then how are you going to escape it if even your social circle, the ones that are supposed to support you, are reminding you of pain? And the fortunate thing is most people, despite the best of intentions, they want to help you, right? That's probably why they're asking. They want to relate with you. However, they haven't gone through your exact same situation. And most of the time, unfortunately, they cannot help, despite them giving good advice. Like, hey, have you tried taking this medication? Or have you tried seeing this doctor? Have you tried getting a massage from this person? Or you should check out my chiropractor. They're really great. And I have a lot of pain too. But think about it. Are they suffering from pain just as much? And they haven't found the answer, despite them kind of giving you advice and so on. You're even in the social circle, it may be in pain, and nobody's getting out of it or managing it so that they're living their life to their fullest. So the tip for this second common mistake of just thinking about pain or others reminding you of pain is kind of the opposite of that. Training your people around you to not ask about pain all the time, tell them you're trying to have it managed under control, and thank you for like asking, but it kind of reminds me of pain or it kind of triggers me, and they'll understand. And you want to kind of focus on other things that you want to do in your life anyways, right? Like achieve your goals, whatever things you value, instead of just hyper focusing about pain and devoting so much time to it and letting pain win. And the thing about pain is like, if you think about it, you're probably, for the majority of you, you're probably not in pain 100% of the time in all your waking hours. You probably have windows of pain-free experiences where you're not having any pain. So reflect back and just think back. Do you have those times? And are you really taking advantage of those times to its fullest to live your life? Or are you just ruminating and so stuck on those moments that when you're not even in pain, you're just thinking about it, when you could be really just taking full advantage and doing the things that you actually want to do that maybe you've given up on doing because you're always in pain? The third mistake is not moving enough. And I know you might be thinking, wait, Jeff, like you must be crazy. Like I'm in pain. How am I going to move? And that's true. But us as humans, we're all meant to move. The more we are sedentary, the more problems we may have, including such as an increase in pain or staying in pain for longer. It actually works against us. Therapists have a saying that is quite relevant to this point, and that's motion is lotion. Motion is lotion. Way back in history, before we had things like microscopes and computers and, like the scientific method and all this data and stuff, we all believed actually that bed rest was good, right? Some of you may have been told this. Even some healthcare providers may tell you this. Some family members, maybe even culturally, you may believe that bed rest is the way to heal, right? While that is true to some degree, such as for like acute pain, such as like a twisted ankle or like a broken bone, ultimately, we all eventually need to get up and move, right? Did you know that 40%, up to 40% of your muscle strength can be lost in as little as a week of not moving and staying in bed. When you're staying in bed for too long, you're actually making your muscles weaker and therefore subsequently harder for you to move. Your heart is a muscle too. It gets weaker and you'll probably be in more pain too. Well, of course, because you're working so hard to even do the most basic of things like walking. So it's actually pretty easy. You don't have to go and go get a gym membership. I mean, if you have one, don't cancel it. You don't have to go on the treadmill, run marathons, work with a lot of super heavy weights. The first thing you need to do and that you should do is probably just get up and start walking. You already noticed that the benefits of walking, research, study after study after study, it's going to say that there are benefits to walking, right? Now, add to this a nice therapeutic environment, something like walking in nature outside where you're getting fresh air and just breathing all that fresh air instead of being stuck inside all day. You're getting the benefits of the sun and vitamin D. It's going to be better for your physical and mental health, right? And you'll find that your pain actually starts to decrease. Even if you're not even be able to do much, hey, Jeff, I can't even go and walk outside. It's way too far. Well, everyone has a certain distance that they can probably walk, even if it's from this side of the room to the other side of the room. I call that walking, even though it's not very far. You're still technically walking. Your only kind of limitation is your own self and what your goals are. You're not comparing yourself to the next person, your family member, an athlete, someone in the Olympics. You're comparing yourself to your own walking ability. And if you can do better in the future, it doesn't even have to be the next day. If it's just the next week or the next month and you're able to walk from here all the way to the door, that's an improvement. And you'll be able to do even that so much more because you can walk a little bit further. But with that said, one important thing to note, and also kind of comes along with the next mistake that people commonly make, is don't overdo it. Slowly increase your activity level, such as the distance that you walk, and be very, very patient with yourself. Don't expect instant results, because the moment you go too far, too fast, too much, too intense, guess what? You're going to be in pain and you're going to feel bad about yourself, and we're not going to want to do anything, right? So that's basically the fourth mistake. And this fourth mistake has two kind of sub mistakes with it. Many of us who have chronic pain have likely experienced these two types of pain cycles. One is overdoing it, kind of like I've been talking about. Like the saying goes, no pain, no gain, right? You've heard that before, probably in gym class. People have told you this. Maybe you're an athlete, you've heard this before. Terrible advice for chronic pain, because at some point your body can't take it and you crash. Your pain is your body's way of telling you to, hey, maybe slow down or stop, right? It's a response that we all experience as humans, as animals too, to alert us of something. And the moment we ignore that, well, then, yeah, your body's going to come back and say, hey, more pain, more pain, more pain. There's actually a cycle that's called the boom bust cycle, where you do so much and you don't listen to your pain, and then you experience the pain, and then you're on the very bottom of the cycle. And then you don't do anything at all. And the moment you recover and feel much better, you go and do stuff and you way overdo it. So you're at the peaks and the troughs, and that's the boom and bust cycle. And it just repeats and repeats. And you're not really living your life to the fullest, because during those downtimes on the bottom of the bust part, you're really not doing much. So you can even argue that half of your life in your living moments, you're not really doing anything. So you're only doing functional things that are meaningful to you, maybe 50% of the time. But even then, if you think about it, you're in pain during those times because you're trying to push through the pain. So that's not the way to go. The second of these cycles is the opposite of the boom bust cycle. I don't know if there's a name for this, but basically you let pain be your guide and you listen to your pain way too much. Like, hey, the moment you're in a little bit of pain, don't do anything. Well, you're not ever going to do anything because you're just overly cautious. You have such a heightened awareness of your pain. You're just overly cautious, protecting yourself way too much. And this is not necessarily your fault. Some therapists, doctors may even told you hey, don't bend this way or don't twist this way. Go wear a brace, or just be careful with your back, and telling you don't do this, do that. And that. Babies grow up moving their body and experimenting and doing all sorts of twisted motions and yoga-y kind of things. If you watch them sleep, they're all over the place. And they're not being very careful with their bodies, and they're living their life. Well, I know that if you're grown up, you may have problems, maybe an x-rays show something, but imagine if it's healed and you're overly protective, then you're not going to be able to fully experience life, even though you may be able to move in a certain way. So a lot of us may have be overconditioned to not move a certain way and have so much fear that we're just not doing anything at all. If you think about the boom bust cycle, it's the opposite. We're just on the bottom all the time and we're not really living our life to the fullest because we may be in bed all day, we may be over sedentary, we may have given up so many activities that we once loved doing, whether it's physical, spiritual, social, psychological, you name it. You've given up a lot of things in your life because, hey, like I'm not gonna go out into a social function because I'm gonna experience pain. I'm not gonna get in a car and drive because I'm gonna experience pain. I'm not gonna go and work and do gardening, whatever the examples are, because of pain. And so you're listening to your pain too much. So as you can imagine, what's the best thing to do for this mistake? It's somewhere in the middle, not overdoing it and not underdoing it too. So not using that saying, no pain, no gain, but also not letting pain be your guide. It's just somewhere in the middle where you're doing a little bit at a time, kind of like my walking example, and slowly increasing it and kind of just teasing that threshold and finding out what may be a little bit almost too much and then backing off a little bit and then adding a little bit every day. Therapists call this increased exposure, graded exposure, so that we're increasing our activity a little bit at a time. And we're not necessarily causing a flare-up, which will cause us to be in so much pain that we're down and we may be depressed, not feeling good, and down for the count. So that's pretty intuitive too. If you think about it, it's kind of like just going in between the middle in the waves of the ups and downs and not getting to that very low point or that very high point where we may trigger a flare-up. But again, the key is to do it very slowly. And one kind of thing you can listen to is soreness. A little bit of soreness, like your muscle soreness, is okay. But the moment you have pain, then you should really listen and back off. Last is the fifth mistake, and that's letting pain cause fear in us. Pain is a tool for us, right? It tells us and alerts us, as I've been saying, kind of, you probably know this. Without it, those people who don't experience pain, like in some like rare conditions, they get hurt a lot. They may bleed, get really injured. They may even die because they're not being alerted that something is wrong. And yes, I know that pain is unpleasant. Like who wants to feel pain, right? Because, well, it hurts and it can even hurt a lot. And, with things like the internet, it's kind of like a blessing and a curse because we can Google things, right? How many of you done that regarding your condition? And you've read up like on things like WebMD and you may have even self-diagnosed yourself. Maybe even think you have like several different diagnoses. Some of you may even have several official diagnoses. So, and some of these may even be, I laugh because some of these may be contradictory and may be extreme opposites of each other, right? So medical terminology, has its purpose, but terms like herniated disc or degenerative disc disease. I mention these because I've been told this, I have these conditions and it freaked me out. And I'm a healthcare provider, so not to downplay these conditions or the diagnoses and that they're not serious. But if you think about it, with chronic pain, most people, if they don't need like emergency surgery, like going to the hospital and like life or death, they probably over time have healed properly because the body does a really, really good job of healing. And the only thing we are often left with comes to chronic pain is just a heightened alarm system that tells us that we're still in pain when in actuality, our physical body has healed. Now, whenever I mention something like this, it's important to note that I'm not saying that your pain isn't real, like it's psychologically made up or something, or some doctors may have told you, some other people may tell you, hey, I don't think your pain is real, or you're just faking it. Your pain is really real, and I don't deny this, and I believe this 100%. But how many of you are just having such a fear response associated either with your own pain or your story about what caused you pain or what you think about when there's pain in like a condition, like a diagnosis, and these like red alert terms like slip disc or something like that. So one clue as to you potentially having a fear response is you may be really guarded or you may protect your body, kind of like how I talked about earlier, like what some therapists or whoever may have told you, like you're just like very careful. You don't even move too much, or the moment you have pain, you like just back off way too much and you're just not doing too much. You may be having an over-conditioned response, over-fear response associated with pain that is working against you psychologically. And the reality is in the medical community, unfortunately, with the training that you would expect like doctors to have actually in like other providers, unless they're like specialists in pain, they unfortunately haven't had much time devoted to the best of the pain treatments. And they may be over-reliant such as for a physical medical model only, and that they're not really considering the holistic approach like our mental health or our social aspects. So they may be reading something like an X-ray or an MRI or something, and that will tell you pain, pain, pain. And they may be telling you this, and they show you these pictures, they give you this diagnosis, or they give you these terms, and you're like gonna freak out, right? Like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? Am I like broken, or I can't move anymore? Like someone tells you, hey, let's go out for a walk. You go, I can't, like I have this problem, right? So you have an overconditioned fear response. And I get it. Like we all want to protect and not hurt ourselves. We may have even been told this when things are just likely to be okay. Medical tests, what they show you isn't necessarily an indication of pain either. Not to deny that you have pain, but many people have x-rays or MRIs of like knees and hips and backs that look like they would probably, based on like the data, that they should be in pain. And guess what? They're not in pain. And just because something like you're older, like you're an older adult, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be in pain either. Guess what? Did you know that high schoolers, they did a study on high schoolers and they measured their pain. They found chronic pain in high schoolers. So just because a test or an exam or an x-ray or imaging or whatever told you that you are in pain doesn't mean that you have to live in pain forever. And conversely, even if a test comes back like still looking bad or getting worse, doesn't necessarily mean that you should be feeling more pain just because a test tells you so, right? Because many people are actually living pain-free despite these scans and things of their body and their anatomy being really, really poor, yet they're in no pain at all. So those of you who have studied psychology or you're familiar with it, you probably all know, even if you haven't, the power of thinking and how we feel or perceive things, our mental health. Like things like stress can even cause more pain. Because if you think about it, what ultimately tells us that we're in pain is our brain. And our brain equals psychology. So the more that you change your thinking and your perception about pain, and you let yourself go when it comes to pain and not necessarily just freak out about it the moment you think about pain or told about pain or anything revolving about pain, then you're probably going to experience less pain over time. So in summary, I highly recommend that you give these things a try, basically doing the opposite of the mistakes in general. The key is to not be also too hard on yourself too, and just know that you're okay and it's okay to do things, and to let family members know, like not to overhelp and to allow you to do things too, because you'd be surprised how much little thing you can do. You're feeling pain free, then you can do a little bit more, and then your family can see that and then also be a source of social support as well. Key is not to overdo things, not to do too little, and just overall general advice, if you forget everything I told you, just go out and live your life. Don't let pain take over and rule your world. So let me know in the comments if some of these are the mistakes that you've made, if you tried doing the opposite and avoiding these mistakes and you're living your life much better. And, unfortunately, it doesn't mean that doing these things and following my tips means that you'll be pain-free. Like, the reality is you may have some pain in your life, but if you think about it, let's call that like 10% of your waking life. If that's 10% from 90%, 80% of your life, I call that a big win. And you can find ways to manage your pain then and control it and work around it. But if you think about it, you're living your life 90% of the time. So isn't that pretty great? I would take that any day than being stuck in being pain like 80%, 90%, 100% of the time, right? So hope this helps. Let me know what you think of these, and good luck. Feel better, guys, and have a nice day.